Good morning, this is YGN News, bringing the youth fun historical information. I'm Isabel Constantino.
And I'm Megan Reyna.
Today, as a part of National Historical Day, we will be doing a special report on some of the important events which occurred during the Cold War. The Cold War was a war between the United States and the Soviet Union, which occurred after World War II.
Today, you'll be viewing information about the USSR and their goals, Germany divided, the domino effect, and lastly, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
And now, let's go to Alejandro for more details.
Thank you, Isabel. The Cold War was the name given to dispute between the USA and the Soviet Union, better known as the USSR. The Soviet Union wanted to make Germany a communist country. They also wanted to create better and stronger nuclear weapons than the United States. During this time, the United States were more advanced than the Soviet Union, but they wanted both to get power over each other. With the massive amount of nuclear weapons they created, they could destroy the world about 3 times. The dispute began off in 1917 and on, because the United States refused to recognize the new Bolshevik government after the Russian Revolution. Stalin's resented the United States also because they had not shared the nuclear weapons with the Soviet Union during the war. They also resented the United States for the fact that Truman had offered post-war relief loans to Great Britain, but not the USSR. Both countries had much to prevent the Cold War from escalating into a bigger war by not using weapons of mass destruction, such as the missile and the bombs.
As seen on this picture, it shows how the war was divided in half. One side for the United States and one side for the Soviet Union. Both countries wanted to take power over each other, and so this created many problems during the Cold War.
And now let's go back to Isabel.
Thank you, Alejandro. The next topic is on Germany divided. After World War II, when Germany was defeated by Britain and France, a declaration for world peace was signed by Winston Churchill and President Franklin Roosevelt by 1941, which was called the Atlantic Charter document, shows how Churchill and Roosevelt expressed their ideally goal to restore the governments of any of the countries that were harmed during World War II. Most importantly, they both wished for peace after the final destruction of the Nazi tyranny and in hopes that people will live in freedom from fear and want. This declaration leads to the idea of the United Nations form. The United Nations was established in 1945 by 3 representatives. After Germany surrendered in World War II, on May 7, 1945, the Yalta Conference was held. The 3 representatives discussed how they should divide Germany. Franklin Roosevelt representing the US, Winston Churchill representing Britain, and Joseph Stalin representing the Soviet Union. They agreed to divide Germany into 4 zones: America, Britain, and France on the western side of Germany. The Soviet Union took all of Eastern Germany. At the capital is the city of Berlin. When Britain and America discussed some economic policies, they started the Marshall Plan, which was to bring money and industrialize buildings post-war to World War II. In response, the Soviets blockaded West Berlin with barbed wire to show America and Britain that they did not want the Soviet Union to be industrialized. This caused America to bring airplanes over the barbed wire, which is called the Berlin Airlift. As Germany became more divided, Britain, France, and America became as one state, forming the Federal Republic of Germany, while the Soviets became the German Democratic Republic. By 1961, a Berlin Wall was built that split Berlin in half. We will now see a clip of how the Berlin Wall affected many people's lives. In West Berlin, the wall was decorated with colored graffiti. Also, people had more freedom to be close to the wall. You can see a cheerful girl playing with bubbles. This was a sign that people lived very happily. In East Berlin, people are unallowed to be near the wall, and they must be at least 50 yards away. The security guard attentively watches for anyone who tries to escape, looking left and right. You can also see a girl crying for being jobless and living in poor conditions, for East Berlin was never industrialized like West Berlin. From out the tree, a fugitive attempts to escape. The security guard pulls out his gun and shoots. The fugitive is shot down and he dies. As you can see, it was a tragic event from August 17, 1962 for those civilians who felt wrong about the Berlin Wall. We will now go to Jasmine for her next report.
Thanks, it's lawyer reporter CJ Cruz here to talk to you about the Domino Theory. The Domino Theory was created during 1945, a time in which Vietnam had declared independence from France. But of course, the U.S. did not take this very well. Current President Dwight D. Eisenhower comes in at this moment, at that time. In a speech he made on September 1945, he creates this theory to justify America's interference with Vietnam. The domino theory was that if one state or region came under the influence of communism, then the surrounding countries would soon follow after in a domino-like effect. Each of these dominoes here represents a different country, and as the theory states that if any of these areas were to follow the USSR's lead, every country would follow soon after and become a communist country in a domino-like effect. Well, thanks for joining me on this news report. Now on to the next news segment with Megan.
Thank you, Jasmine, and hello everybody. My name is Megan Reyna, and today I'll be talking to you about the world-threatening event of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Let's get started. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a 13-day standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union starting on October 14, 1962. But before I go into major detail about the main event itself, I'd like to provide you with some background information regarding Cuban and American relations prior to the crisis. So let's jump back to the year of 1898 in which the Spanish-American War had occurred. The United States had helped Cuba fight for their independence from Spain. After the war was won, the United States had control over Cuba for maybe 50 years or so. Moving forward to the year of 1959, the infamous communist leader Fidel Castro had taken over Cuba. He was able to create an alliance with the Soviet Union, thus enabling two powers to be located right beneath the United States. During this time, Dwight D. Eisenhower was president, and he had initiated a plan named Bay of Pigs. The plan was to train Cuban exiles and send them back to Cuba in order for them to overthrow Castro. Before the plan was played out, President Eisenhower's presidency had ended, and to fill in his place was President John F. Kennedy. At first, Kennedy was not sure whether or not he wanted to go with this plan, but soon he did agree to go for it. Needless to say, the Bay of Pigs was a complete disaster because Kennedy had backed out right in the middle of the mission. Later on, President Kennedy had created another plan named Operation Mongoose. Long story short, it was a plan to have Castro killed. This did not end well either, it just left a bad impression in the minds of the Soviets and the Cubans. Finally, we reached the topic itself, the crisis, in the year of 1962. So far, we have 1 tried to invade Cuba and 2 tried to kill their leader. How will the opposing side react? Well, Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the USSR, had made an agreement with Castro saying a production of missiles should be created in order to prevent an American invasion. In September 1962, an American U-2 had been flying over the island of Cuba and came across the missile site in progress. The large missiles were pointed towards the US, and we had seen this as a threat because Cuba is only 90 miles away from our shores. Think of that as from our city of Vallejo all the way down to Santa Cruz, give or take a few miles. The missiles could be targeted at certain cities like Miami, New Orleans, Washington, D.C., and many others. The news was immediately transferred to President Kennedy, and he had consulted the XCOM, which were a group of American leaders that were consulted during serious situations like this. Of course, Americans were afraid because they didn't know whether or not the missiles would be launched. The XCOM had suggested that Cuba must be attacked at once, but President Kennedy did not like this idea because he knew if we attacked them, the Soviet Union would retaliate and a nuclear war would start that would soon lead to a potential World War III. Instead, President Kennedy had created the naval blockade that would regulate incoming and outgoing ships from Cuba that could have held these threatening weapons. It was an effective alternative that did not lead to much violence, but it did not end the crisis altogether. During this time, another American U-2 was sent out to track the missile site in progress, and it was immediately shot down by the Soviet Union. America was on the verge of retaliating, but soon both sides of the dispute had created an agreement that would end the crisis on October 28, 1962. Both sides thought, well, hey, if we do not need to use missiles to end the world, then there are different solutions and we could solve this peacefully. So in order for the Soviets to stop the use of their missiles, the United States would have to agree never to invade Cuba and to stop using their missiles in Turkey. Although the crisis was said to be only 13 days, the United States had kept tabs on the Soviet Union for an additional 3 weeks after the blockade was dismantled, in case of any suspicious activity. To this day, small tensions between America and Cuba remain. In addition, Cuba continues to follow a communist government. President Barack Obama had announced that he would lift some of the restrictions that would ease the embargo, although not ending it altogether. Unfortunately, that is all the time I have today. I wish I could have given you a day-by-day summary during the whole entire crisis, but I cannot supply you that information right now. But I hope I have given you information that would help you later on in the future. And I also do hope that you enjoyed today's broadcast, and thank you for watching. This is YGN News. I am Megan Reina, and now back to the YGN News broadcasting station. Thank you, and bye.
So the USSR was to convert Germany into a communist country and to compete with the USA with nuclear weapons. Now to you, Isabel.
Okay, thank you. The Cold War takes an important event in history because it's about how Germany was divided by 4 leaders. This led the Berlin Wall to be constructed, which caused many families to be separated. Chad?
Thanks, Isabel. The Domino Theory was made due to the independence of Vietnam from France because America wanted to interfere. President Dwight D. Eisenhower coined the phrase the domino effect, which was, they believed, soon after many other countries would become communist. To Megan.
Thank you. Okay, so the Soviet Union teamed up with the communist country of Cuba in order to place missiles against the US. It did cause major tension for 13 days in October. Both sides of the dispute created an agreement that ended on October 28, 1962. And that is the Cuban Missile Crisis, and this is YGN News.
Thank you for watching!
I'm not. Well, you can just let me borrow that. Also wanted to create. I guess to get the nuts. Thank you, Isabel. Well, okay, the coral.
Okay, I'm sorry.
YGN News! Oh wait, we're doing Outtakes now.
Potatoes. Need to stop or you guys are all ugly.
Well then.
Include that.
Which Vietnam had declared independence. Yeah. No.
This led the Berlin Wall to be constructed, which caused many families.
Can we start over?
Okay! Oh my god!
I do have a child in love. Speech he made on September 19. I done goof.
Germany wanted to.
Domino-like effect.
I like potatoes.
What you say? Oh, that you only meant well, 'cause you did. What you say?